We live in an age that worships words. I love you is tossed around like a greeting card slogan. Quick, easy, emotionally charged, but often shallow. People say things they don't mean and mean things they never say. And that's where the real danger lies, when you assume love is always loud, always spoken, always clear. It isn't. Love, when it is real, is subtle. It exists more often in the margins than in the headline. It lives in the quiet details, in what people do when you're not watching, in how they respond to your pain, and in how they behave when there's nothing in it for them. You cannot measure the depth of someone's affection by their vocabulary. You measure it by their consistency, by their willingness to be inconvenienced, by their silent protection of your dignity. And this kind of love, it doesn't always come wrapped in poetry or promises. It comes in ordinary moments, the kind most people overlook because they're too busy waiting for a grand gesture. But grand gestures are easy. They're often staged, momentary, and self-serving. Real love, enduring love, is subtle. It's unassuming. It doesn't ask to be seen, but it changes the room when it enters. It steadies you, it strengthens you, and you feel it most when you're struggling, not when you're celebrating. So if you've been wondering whether someone truly cares about you, stop obsessing over what they say. Start paying attention to what they do when they don't have to. Because that's where the truth lives, in the unnoticed, in the unspoken, in the subtle. And once you learn to see that kind of love, you'll never be fooled by anything less again. You have to understand something fundamental about human nature. People don't give their time, energy, or presence freely unless something matters deeply to them. The world is full of noise. Everyone talking, everyone trying to be heard, everyone throwing around words they haven't earned the right to use. And yet the one thing you can't fake, not sustainably, is sacrifice. When someone goes out of their way for you, when they inconvenience themselves, not for applause, not for recognition, but quietly, without expectation, that's not casual interest. That's love in its most unglamorous and honest form. Because love isn't found in the explosion of romance movies or the choreographed drama of social media posts. It's found in the quiet gesture. The person who remembers that you like your coffee a certain way, who texts you to remind you to eat, who listens even when they're tired, who notices the tremor in your voice even when you say, "I'm fine." Love isn't loud, it's deliberate. It gives, and more than anything, it sacrifices. It's about what someone is willing to set aside so that you're okay. And here's the brutal truth. People don't sacrifice for things they don't value. If they're not willing to stretch, bend, or lose a little comfort for you, it's not love. It's convenience. You can't afford to confuse the two. It's easy to be present when everything's perfect. It's easy to send sweet messages when life's simple. But what about when things are chaotic? When they're tired, when helping you will cost them something they can't get back? Time, energy, sleep, peace. Do they still show up then? Because if they do, that's not just kindness, that's love with depth. A person who loves you may not always know how to say it, but you will feel it in what they're willing to give up for your sake. Maybe it's a Friday night they could have spent relaxing, but they're instead holding space for your breakdown. Maybe it's choosing to drive across town just to see you for 20 minutes between their obligations. Maybe it's defending you when you're not in the room, even if it puts them at odds with others. These aren't acts of obligation. These are acts of silent loyalty. And loyalty is born from sacrifice. Now think about yourself. Who would you do that for? Who would you move heaven and earth for if they needed you? The answer reveals who you love, regardless of what you've said. It's not the proclamation that proves love. It's what you give up. Love always costs something: comfort, control, predictability. And if it costs you nothing, it's probably worth nothing. Too many people waste time chasing words. They chase declarations. Tell me you love me. And yes, words have a place. But the person who loves you doesn't need to be told to act in your interest. They just do. The person who loves you scans the room to make sure you're okay, even when they're surrounded by others. The person who loves you says, "Are you safe?" before asking, "What happened?" The person who loves you pays attention to your silences more than your words, because love doesn't always wait for clarity. It acts when it senses you're not okay. You have to open your eyes to that kind of love. It's not flashy. It won't flood you with validation. It won't post about you, but it will change you. It will calm your nervous system. It will anchor you in storms. It will make you feel like you're not carrying the weight of your world alone. And that, more than anything, is what matters. Because when someone is willing to take on some of your burden, uninvited, with no expectation of reward, that's a soul telling you, in the only way that really counts, you matter more than my convenience. And it's worth pointing out that sacrifice is often uncomfortable. It pushes the one making it outside their comfort zone. But love doesn't grow inside comfort zones. It grows when someone says, "This isn't easy for me, but you're worth it." That kind of love strengthens the bond between people in ways no scripted confession ever could, because it's earned, not performed. The tragedy is most people miss this. They miss the love right in front of them because they're looking for it in the wrong places. They want sparkles and speeches, but they overlook the person who stays late to help, who remembers how you like things, who is exhausted but still makes time, who hears your unsaid pain and doesn't run from it. That's not just love. It's rare, and it should be honored. So if you want to know who truly loves you, don't ask, watch. Observe who gives you time when it's scarce, who adjusts their plans without resentment, who notices when something's wrong even if you don't say a word, who puts down their phone when you're talking, who sacrifices not once but consistently, because one act might be guilt or obligation, but a pattern of quiet sacrifice, that's commitment, that's truth. And if you are the one making those sacrifices for someone, understand this: your actions are not small. They are the proof of your depth. Don't let anyone make you feel invisible for loving silently. The world may not always recognize quiet sacrifice, but that doesn't make it any less noble. Real love isn't desperate for attention. It doesn't need a spotlight. It needs consistency. It needs integrity. And it needs courage. The courage to give even when you might not receive equally in return. So stop measuring love by volume. Measure it by effort. Measure it by sacrifice. Because in a world where people say anything for their own gain, the one who gives you their time, their energy, and their comfort without needing applause has already said the most powerful thing of all. They've told you they love you without saying a word. It is a fundamental human need to feel safe, physically, yes, but more importantly, emotionally. Most people underestimate this. They chase connection through intensity, chemistry, excitement. But intensity without safety is chaos. Chemistry without stability is volatility. What truly lasts, what nourishes the soul and builds a relationship that can withstand the pressure of life, is emotional safety. And that come from passion or charm. It comes from the presence of a person who gives you the freedom to be your full, flawed self without fear of punishment. When someone loves you deeply, they create a space where your vulnerability is not a liability. You don't have to perform for them. You don't have to pretend to be okay when you're not. You don't have to filter your emotions to avoid upsetting them. You're not walking on eggshells. You're not calculating your next word. You're not afraid of being misunderstood, because they're not waiting for a perfect version of you. They're present with the real one, and that kind of presence is rare. It's the kind of presence that says, I see you, all of you, the strength and the struggle, the courage and the confusion, the ambition and the anxiety, and I'm still here. That's not just kindness, that's love in its most enduring form. Because to truly love someone, you have to be a witness to their humanity, not just their highlights, but their mess, their wounds, their contradictions. And when someone creates emotional safety, they're saying, you don't have to earn my acceptance by being perfect. You already have it. Think about how rare that is. Most people love conditions, not individuals. They love the idea of someone. They love how someone makes them feel. But the second the imperfections surface, the insecurity, the pain, the confusion, they pull away. They critique. They withdraw. Or worse, they manipulate. That's not love. That's control dressed up as care. Emotional safety is the opposite of control. It says, I don't need you to be anything other than honest. And when someone truly cares for you, they notice your emotional shifts. Not to police you, not to fix you, but to understand you. They ask what's wrong, not to get through the conversation, but to go into the depths with you. They don't rush your healing. They don't try to silence your sadness with cliches. They sit in it with you. They stay, not because it's easy, but because they understand that real intimacy is forged through emotional labor, not just good times. The person who loves you doesn't shame your breakdown. They don't recoil from your tears. They don't weaponize your past when you're vulnerable. Instead, they protect that part of you like it's sacred, because to them it is. That kind of love makes you feel safe, not just in their presence, but even in their absence. You don't lie awake wondering if you said too much. You don't spend hours trying to decode their reaction. You're not haunted by anxiety after being honest. You're calm, you're grounded, because they've shown you that honesty doesn't cost you connection, it deepens it. And emotional safety is not about being soft all the time. It doesn't mean avoiding hard conversations or pretending everything's fine. It means that when those conversations happen, they're done with care, not cruelty. It means that disagreements don't lead to degradation. It means that you're allowed to say, I'm struggling, without being seen as a burden. And that someone will say in return, I've got you, not get over it. So many people are stuck in relationships that are emotionally expensive. They spend their energy trying not to upset the other person. They manage someone else's reactions instead of expressing their own. They silence their truth to keep the peace, forgetting that a peace that costs your authenticity is not peace at all. It's suppression. And love does not require you to suppress yourself. It requires you to reveal yourself. And when someone loves you, truly loves you, they don't flinch when you do. They lean in. They say, tell me more. They ask what you need instead of assuming. They give you room to process, and they don't make your emotions about them. They don't compete for who has it worse. They know that your pain is not a threat to them. It's an invitation to support. And they accept that invitation without needing to be the hero. They just want to be present. And presence is one of the rarest gifts anyone can give in a world addicted to distraction. Look at the people in your life. Who allows you to be your unfiltered self without making you feel small for it? Who hears the silence between your words and doesn't run from it. And who sits with you in the uncomfortable emotions? Not because they enjoy discomfort, but because they value you more than their own comfort. That's not just friendship or kindness, that's a form of love the world doesn't teach us to recognize, but it's the most important kind there is. We're taught to fall for charisma, for attraction, for someone who makes our heart race. But the real question is this: who slows your heart down? Who makes you feel that no matter how stormy your internal world becomes, they will not abandon you at its most chaotic moment? That person, the one who offers you safety without needing to fix or change you, is giving you something rare. They're giving you a space where your soul can exhale, and that is love. You'll know it by how you feel after talking to them. Not drained, not anxious, not confused, but lighter. Understood, calmer, because someone who loves you creates a shelter in the emotional wilderness. They don't just hear your words, they understand your silence. They don't just hold your hand, they hold your truth. And when you find that, don't take it for granted. Protect it, honor it. Because in a world where most people want to be entertained, the one who wants to understand you is a gift you may only find once. There is a certain quiet power in being truly seen. In a world that is constantly distracted, glued to screens, obsessed with performance, addicted to noise, attention has become one of the rarest and most valuable forms of love. Not grand, not showy, not theatrical attention, but the kind that pays close notice to the details of who you are. The kind of attention that says, I've been observing, not to control you, but to understand you. I want to know what makes you feel safe, what breaks you, what lifts you. This isn't about being watched. It's about being noticed for who you really are when no one else is paying attention. You can tell when someone is truly present. They don't just hear your words, they register them. They don't wait for their turn to speak. They respond to what you said with thought and care. They notice the change in your tone when you're pretending to be okay. They remember that you like your coffee a certain way, or that you hate being interrupted when you're anxious. They know that when you go quiet, it doesn't mean nothing's wrong. It means everything is. These little things might seem minor, but they are profound. Because attention, real, focused, consistent attention, is love in action. There's a kind of love that doesn't need to announce itself because it's too busy studying you. It sees you when you're not looking. It listens even when you don't think you're saying anything important. It stores away information, not for leverage, but to care better. When someone remembers the offhand comment you made 6 weeks ago, or brings you something you didn't even realize you needed, that is not just thoughtfulness. That is devotion made visible. And this is the tragedy for most people. They spend so much time chasing approval that they overlook the person who's quietly paying attention. They look for affection in noise, but love often whispers. And the ones who care the most usually aren't the loudest about it. They're the ones adjusting their behavior around your needs. They're the ones learning your emotional language without needing a dictionary. They're the ones who hear what you don't say. That is not weakness. That is a remarkable strength. Because it takes discipline and maturity to observe, to absorb, to truly know someone without trying to change them. When someone gives you their attention, they are offering something they will never get back. Time is finite. Focus is energy. And in today's distracted world, to give someone your undivided attention is to say, you matter more than the noise. You matter more than the scroll. You matter enough for me to be fully here, now. That is not casual. That is rare. Most people don't realize how telling this is. If you want to know if someone truly loves you, pay attention to what they notice. Do they see the details of your life? Do they care about your preferences, your routines, your triggers? Do they follow through on things you only mentioned once? Do they remember the way you talk about your past? Love listens not just with ears, but with the heart. It's not just about being available. It's about being engaged. And there's a vulnerability in being seen this way. Because when someone truly notices you, they will also notice the cracks, the inconsistencies, the contradictions, the parts of you that aren't polished. But the one who loves you doesn't use those details against you. They use them to love you more precisely, more accurately, more humanly. They don't ask you to shrink or edit yourself. Instead, they stretch their understanding to fit your complexity. That kind of attention is healing. It soothes you in ways that words can't. Because when someone has studied your emotional weather, they know how to bring you calm when storms arise. They know when to speak and when to simply sit in silence beside you. They don't try to force you out of your pain. They meet you in it. They remember what works for you and they act on it without being told. And that kind of attentiveness, that is love disguised as understanding. There is no shortcut to this kind of connection. You don't get there through chemistry or charm. You get there through intention, through care, through noticing what the rest of the world misses. When someone really loves you, they're a student of you, not in a controlling way, in a reverent way. They know your habits, not because they're spying, but because they want to honor you in the smallest ways. And it's in the smallest ways that the biggest truths about love are revealed. Because you don't need someone to promise you the stars. You need someone who notices when you're cold and offers you their jacket. You don't need someone to recite poetry. You need someone who sees the sadness behind your smile and asks you what's really going on. You don't need someone who performs love. You need someone who practices it in quiet, ordinary, daily choices. It is not that love cannot be spoken. Of course it can. But words are wind when not backed by awareness. The kind of awareness that requires patience, presence, and a deep desire to know not just the parts of you that are easy to love, but the parts that are complicated, inconsistent, and layered. Because when someone pays attention to all of you, not just the convenient parts, they are saying, I see you and I still choose you. That is not only love, that is rare, that is sacred. So if you ever find someone who pays attention to the details of who you are, don't overlook it. Don't dismiss it, because it doesn't come with fireworks. Because fireworks fade. But steady, attentive love, that's what holds you together when everything else falls apart. That's the kind of love that isn't chasing an audience. It's building a foundation. Quietly, intentionally, and with a depth that most never find. Love isn't loud. It isn't always wrapped in declarations, poems, or dramatic gestures. Often it's built quietly in the structure of everyday life, shaped by the choices a person makes when no one is watching. Love is revealed not in promises, but in patterns. And if you pay attention to someone's patterns, how they treat you when it's inconvenient, how they handle your needs when they clash with theirs, how often they make room for you in their decisions, you will know exactly where you stand in their heart. There's something deeply revealing about consistency. It tells the truth even when words are vague. Because anyone can be attentive once. Anyone can be generous in moments of passion or guilt. But someone who loves you truly builds their life to include you, not just in big dreams, but in ordinary moments. They don't just think of you when they're lonely. They think of you when they're planning their day, making choices, arranging their time. They weigh your presence as part of their direction, not an afterthought. And that is where you'll find the deepest kind of love. not in the rare intensity of a grand moment, but in the quiet, deliberate inclusion of you in their life's rhythm. Love is in the small decisions. It's in the message they send when they know you're anxious. It's in the extra effort they make to remember something that matters to you. It's in the way they carve out time, even when they're tired, not because they're obligated, but because you matter. It's in the way they protect your peace, even if it means compromising their own comfort. These acts are not trivial. They are the substance of devotion. You can see it when someone shifts their priorities to include you, not because they've lost themselves, but because they understand that love is a choice you make every day. It's not a feeling that comes and goes with the wind. It's a structure, a discipline made of 100 small sacrifices. And when someone cares, they don't wait for a crisis to show up. They show up constantly, steadily, predictably, not perfectly, but faithfully. And that consistency builds trust. It gives you a place to rest, a place to breathe, a place to feel, finally, that you don't have to earn your way into someone's life. You already belong there. That's the difference. When someone loves you, you're not an interruption, you're not a burden they tolerate between their priorities. You are a priority. Your needs, your time, your emotional reality, it's all considered. They don't guilt you for needing attention. They don't make you feel like you're asking for too much. They don't act as though your presence is optional. Instead, they live as though you're essential, not in a possessive way, but in a way that honors the connection for what it is: sacred, fragile, and deeply meaningful. When someone loves you, they plan around you. They don't just fit you in, they make space. Space in their schedule, in their decisions, in their future. And you'll notice it because they don't just talk about someday with you. They take steps, they rearrange, they compromise, they include. This kind of love is not passive, it's active. It takes work, it takes clarity. And it's easy to overlook because the world has trained us to equate love with fireworks, tension, and adrenaline. But real love feels safe, steady, and deeply rooted in choice. This isn't about someone losing themselves for you. It's not about sacrificing all independence or identity. It's about a mutual, voluntary decision to make each other important, repeatedly, even when it's inconvenient. Especially when it's inconvenient. Because that's the test of devotion. Will they still show up when it's hard? Will they still think of you when it costs them time, energy, or comfort? Will they adapt when their instinct is to retreat? Most people show love when it's easy. Few show it when it requires delayed gratification, emotional discipline, or inconvenient compromise. So if someone is making those small adjustments, changing a meeting to hear you out, skipping something they enjoy because you need them, pausing their agenda to support your growth, they're showing love in one of its most authentic forms. Consistency reveals character. And love is not separate from character. In fact, character is the foundation love stands on. Without it, affection becomes unreliable. Passion becomes manipulation. Attention becomes temporary. But when someone builds their actions around your well-being, not once, but regularly, it reveals something far more powerful than a feeling. It reveals loyalty. And loyalty isn't loud. It's quiet. It's firm, and it's unmistakable. People who love you won't be perfect, but they'll be present. They may stumble, forget, or fall short sometimes, but they'll return. They'll realign. They'll try again. Because you matter. Because the connection matters. Because they're not looking for convenience, they're building something meaningful. And that takes effort. That takes choosing you, not once, but repeatedly, over and over, when they have every reason not to. So, if you feel like someone is showing up for you consistently, not just when it's easy or fun or beneficial, but when it's challenging, uncertain, or uncomfortable, that's not just affection, that's love. That's the kind of love that builds trust in your nervous system. It calms your doubts without grand speeches. It makes you feel at home without needing to ask for reassurance. And it teaches you gently that you are not hard to love. You are just waiting for someone willing to love you on purpose. That's the kind of love that changes people. Not because it's flashy, but because it's dependable. Not because it burns hot, but because it burns long. That kind of love doesn't just show up when you win. It shows up when you weep, when you're tired, when you're lost. And it doesn't retreat, it leans in. It chooses you, not for what you offer, but for who you are. So don't get distracted by loud expressions or rare gestures. Pay attention to the pattern, to the way they weave you into their life. That's where love lives. Not in the promises of someday,